Good afternoon, good evening, good evening, good afternoon. Well, it's 10 past 4, quarter past 4, so I guess it's afternoon. First of all, I want to thank some Patreons. I want to start doing this now. I wanted to wait until I didn't have a pitiful small number of Patreons, so I could at least put you all in, so you weren't thinking that you were called out on your own. So, Jacob Ekman, thank you very much. Kevin Spiral, thank you very much. Ben, I know you're on the... I know you are on the Discord server. Thank you very much. Elucidium? Elucidium? Yeah, Elucidium, thank you very much. Mark Spooner, thank you very much. Jack Murtar, thank you very much. And Enigma, thank you so much to all of you for making my week and making my year, really, and being patrons. Thank you very much. So today's Games Workshop story is more going to be on the nastier sides of the hobby that I've seen coming into the hobby when I've been a part of it, when I've been working, and Games Workshop's response to that panic. I've been asked about the moral panic, the quote-unquote moral panic about Games Workshop and all of our lovely pieces of content. Remember, the style of Games Workshop, what they say to you is, our world's your hobby. Or, welcome to our world. That's what they like to say. Now, for some reason, Games Workshop has attracted a certain class of fan. What I mean by that is, edgelords. There are some edgelords who like Games Workshop content, and that is not a bad thing in itself. In fact, what I would like to say is, when I was running the store, every now and again I would get people coming in with rather right-leaning beliefs, or rather right-leaning rucksacks, for instance, with the Iron Cross in it, right? A lot of people tend to look at certain parts of Games Workshop's totalitarian settings, and they identify with it a little bit too much, right? But what we need to be very careful of is we need to recognise that happens, and that's fine. We need to talk to those people about why maybe they shouldn't do that. What we shouldn't do is change the settings and make them more tame. That's what we shouldn't do, right? I love how grimdark 40k is. I love how absolutely unrelenting and adult it can be at times. I love how serious it can be, and how sometimes it doesn't take itself too seriously, but most of the time, it's a fight for survival, and it's epic, and it's cool. What we don't want is Saturday morning cartoon 40k, i.e. Age of Sigmar. That's what we don't want. We don't want that. We love the in-depth, the absolutely relentless lore that we get from Warhammer 40,000, and I believe that if we stop doing edgy content, quote-unquote, to appease people who don't like the fact that edgy people latch on to edgy content, then I'm afraid you lose the soul of 40k in itself. Right? You lose what brought us here in the first place. I wanted to get that out the way first, before I start talking about anything else. So, edgy customers. So there's one customer I had, let's call him Paul, at my store, and he came out and said, I want to do a Space Marine chapter. And I was like, okay, cool. I want to base it on the Third Reich. And I said, okay, right. How are you going to do this? And he said, well, I'm going to have a field marshal, and we're going to have a lot of German names, and we're going to have all these different. We're even going to have like a youth system. And I was like, okay, right. And he, sort of like the. I'm like, don't say it. I know what you mean. Right? Okay. He was talking about the Hitler Youth. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Don't say it. I know what you mean. Yes. And I said, I'd love to take it to tournaments. And I just stopped him and said, Paul, you cannot take this army to a tournament. I mean, you can. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you what you can and can't do. That's not what I'm trying to do, right? Literally not. I'm going to cough 1 second. That's literally not what I'm trying to do, Paul. Listen, if you take this to a tournament, you either will be asked to leave, right? Or people will refuse to play you and you'll cause a big old stink. Now, I personally believe that as somebody as a free citizen, you have complete artistic license to do whatever the fuck you want with your models. That's completely up to you. I wouldn't allow it to be played in my store, because I will get sacked if someone came in or we had a complaint, right? Especially in the current climate. And I'll be honest with you, even if I had my own hobby store, I'd probably ask you to tone down the far right wing stuff when you're in the store. You know what I mean? If we went to a private game at my house, dude, do whatever you want. You know, I don't mind, as long as it's not like persecuting anybody. Go and do whatever you want. That's fine. Maybe you like the Nazi symbols rather than the ideology. That's fine, but not in a tournament and not in a store. It's not going to fly. You're just putting the organisers in a really shitty position. And as far as you know, they might be like me, where they say, hey, if you want to believe in Nazi ideology, that's up to you. That's completely up to you. I'm not going to denigrate you for that. That's up to you. But don't bring it into my store. We can't say to the left, take your politics out of 40k and then allow people like you in. That's not fair, right? That's just not fair. So, that's what I said. And he was very fine with that. He was completely, you know what? He was completely understanding, and he was the sweetest guy I've met in a long time. He was from South America, and he was British, but his family's from South America, and he came over here, and he was playing games with us, and he was really good player. He was really, really funny, and he ended up being one of my support staff in the store. I ended up like giving the hallowed blue T-shirt and saying, yeah, when I'm not in, you can run the store, because I trusted him that much. But he did have those leanings sometimes where I was like, "Ooh, okay." But yeah, that was one occasion where something's happened where I wasn't quite happy with it. Right? That's what I'm trying to say. If there is a moral panic about Games Workshop, then so be it. Right? Dungeons and Dragons has been through it. Nearly everything that anyone ever enjoys has a moral panic at some point. Rock music. You know, everything that's fun and good gets a bit of moral panic. The only thing that doesn't get moral panic is tepid nonsense. Like tepid, idiotic nonsense that no one listens to or wants to watch anyway. You know, that's the only stuff that doesn't tend to get things like that. So, that was one customer. Let's go on the other side of the scale. I have had somebody come into my store, and I shit you not, in a Che Guevara t-shirt, right, with a beret on. Yeah. And he starts to get out, and this really killed me. This killed me. This absolutely killed me. So he ended up getting out Imperial Guard from his box, and they were Death Corps of Krieg, and I was so happy to see those models on the tabletop. I thought, this is great. This is brilliant, awesome, brilliant stuff. Only to find that most of their banners had Soviet flags on them. Most of them wore Red Army uniforms. And the guy kept going on about the evils of he kept going on about the evils of capitalism. You bought all of this from Forge World. You literally went on to Forge World and paid more money than somebody who comes into my store pays. 2 or 3 times that amount, in fact. You support capitalism. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, it was just my fucking brain just could not deal with this guy. I don't even remember his name. He was Irish. He had a pretty cool Chaos Army that had no political shit with it at all. It was brilliant, lovely looking Nurgle army. And then he brought this in, and he was so proud of it. And it's just so hard to go up to somebody and say, look, dude, that's not appropriate. Like, I don't want that in the store. I love your models, I love your passion, and I love the paintwork. But if I say to somebody, you can't have a far-right leaning, politically themed army in the store, I can't have this in the store either. I can't say that to that guy and then let you play with this. You know? And I hated doing it. But I'm not losing my job. You know what I mean? I'm not losing my job because somebody is a bit of an edgelord and likes communism. Fuck that shit, right? I know he's got other armies to play, and I know we had him with him as well. I said, listen, do you mind just playing Death Guard? You know, you brought your Death Guard. I love seeing them. Do you mind just playing them? Because like, If my manager walks in, my line manager walks in and sees this, I'm getting the bullet, right? I mean, I tell a lie here, right? If a Games Workshop manager walked in, line manager walked in, and saw that there was a communist-themed army on the tabletop, they're uneducated. They don't know the evils of communism. Most of them, they would just not. They would either not notice it or they wouldn't care because it's not far right. So they don't care. But I care. I care about fairness. And if I'm telling somebody on the far right that they can't have their army in my store, I'm telling this guy that he can't have his army in my store as well. That's just how I roll. I don't care, right? That's just fairness. We don't do hypocrisy, right? Now, again, he was a little bit offset. He was a little bit annoyed, and I completely understand where he was coming from. He wasn't happy. He wasn't, he was very offended, really, that it's like I was attacking his personal beliefs. It's like I was attacking something that was at the core of him. Now, people will judge him for that, but I don't, because I understand where he's coming from, right? Your beliefs about things like that are completely unique and special to you. And if somebody then takes that and sort of says, you can't show that in here, it's shitty. It's a shitty feeling. The only difference is the other person was able to see where I was coming from in my situation and acquiesce to those needs. This guy was not willing to acquiesce to my needs. I think mainly it's got a lot to do with the fact that one is more accepted than the other. People who are on the far right are far more capable and understanding of saying, hey, yeah, I get this. Yeah, I know this might offend some people. I don't want to ruin your job, right? Because people are going to get offended by me because no one tolerates my beliefs. And they're used to it. Whereas people on the far left, they're a lot more tolerated by everybody. And so they're not used to people coming up to them and saying, hey, take that shit and get the fuck out, right? They're not used to that. And again, this guy was a lovely guy most of the time, right? In fact, he beat me all the time when I played him. He was a really good player, but I couldn't have that in the store, and that's just how that went. So I want to move on to Games Workshop Moral Panic, right? Because I touched on it before, and again, as I said before, there will be a moral panic about everything, and people on YouTube tend to create mountains out of molehills. They tend to take something and say, "Oh, it's just the worst. This is the worst thing that could ever happen to the hobby," and blah 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 blah. I like Arch Warhammer, for instance, but he does that a lot as well. Like he will sensationalize things that don't really need to be sensationalized. And he also makes a lot of good points on things that are very important. But there are slow news days, and everybody is guilty on a slow news day of taking something and blowing it out of all proportion. I'm very lucky in the fact that I've worked for the company and I've got dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of anecdotes of my time there that I really want to share. And I don't really have slow news days. But I understand that if you have a huge following that are expecting the ravenous for content, I'm even getting that now, and I'm a speck of a YouTuber. No one gives a shit about me, but I even get that now. Like I have a burgeoning community on Discord that I'm so happy to have. That people are talking and people are sharing their thoughts about the hobby and about video games, about anything, and even the advice section. We're getting loads of people coming in there and talking about their lives and what's frustrating them, and people are offering them help and solutions, or even just a figurative shoulder to cry on or an ear to shout into. So I'm extremely happy that people are doing that on the channel at the moment. It's wonderful, wonderful stuff. What I would say is that on slow news days, it's better for the hobby to not sensationalize things that don't need to be sensationalized, because the boy who cried wolf is a real thing. There does come a time when Games Workshop will do something actually horrific. You know they're going to do it. I know they're going to do it. It's just a matter of time before they pull another, content creator apocalypse, before they pull something else out of the hat that's going to just really annoy everybody. And the same people will complain about it, but it's the same people who have been complaining all year about tiny things just because they want to run down Games Workshop. I'm never going to be that channel because I like Games Workshop. I like Games Workshop. I like what they do. I like the company. I like a lot of the people working for it. I have a lot of funny stories about working there. But these stories you'll hear about any place that you go and have a have a job in, right? Especially if it's to do with retail. It's just funny because it's Games Workshop side, and geeks don't know how to handle confrontation, and it's hilarious. But I will say, in terms of moral panic, like, everybody's had it, and everybody's going to get it. Everybody's going to get a taste of it at some point. You know, everybody's going to get a taste of moral panic at some point. I'm actually honestly surprised it's taken Warhammer 40,000 this long to receive their dose of wokeness, to receive their dose of the far left leaning, outrage brigade. I'm honestly surprised it took this long. When the Me Too stuff was going on, I thought it was a matter of... I'm just like, we're days away. We're days away from the apocalypse literally hitting Warhammer 40,000 and it being neutered. Thankfully, that hasn't really happened. But what I will say is that there are two groups forming in Warhammer 40,000. And there's some crossover here as well. So if you are somebody who likes what I'm about to say, that I'm not putting you in that box, because there are crossovers. The people who really like Guilliman, the people who really like Ultramarines, the people who really like that type of the hobby, tend to be the more left-leaning, tend to be the more happy that things are being neutered and bogged down and, you know, made simple for everybody else and made less severe for everybody else. On the other side, we have people who love things like Black Templars, right? And I love Black Templars, by the way. We have people who love things like Grey Knights. We have people who love the harshness of Warhammer 40,000's setting. And don't even get me started on the Chaos Bros. Oh, Jesus, right? We have people who love the harsh reality of Warhammer 40,000, the grim darkness, right? And you even have on the far that side the Dark Heresy players, because those guys are fucking hardcore most of the time, right? And there seems to be this divide that I'm seeing in the hobby of people who love the new lore and they love the Primaris Marines in lore, and the people who they hate that stuff. They want to go back to and keep it as it is. What I think Games Workshop have done a really good job with is walking that tightrope so far of old and new, and saying, look, it's okay to have both. And the greatest gesture that they made was making sure that the Firstborn Marines, the smaller models that you have, are just as tough to kill as the Primaris Marines, almost, right? And quite frankly, every now and again, they have better weaponry as well. They have Devastator squads and things like that, right? They have Terminator squads, you know? So I think at the moment, Games Workshop are walking a very good tightrope. And I know that's not going to be an answer that a lot of people want to hear, but I'm quite optimistic about the so-called moral panic. I think Games Workshop will weather this. I think Warhammer 40,000 will weather this. They as much as they play lip service and giving in to the woke mobs and things like that, I honestly think that the people who have the soul of Warhammer 40,000 in mind, look, if it was going to change in a big way, I think it would have by now. In 2018, I was quite concerned. When the Primaris Marines came in and Guilliman came back, I was a little bit concerned that we were going to see a Sigmarification of Warhammer 40,000. It's not really happened yet. Sure, certain parts, yes. Certain parts of it are getting more tame. Don't, you know... But even in the setting, look at what they've done to the setting, right? You have Imperium Nihilus and the Imperium. Imperium Nihilus is a fucking hellhole of grim darkness, right? All of the grim, dark, edgy storylines tend to be happening in the north, in the grim, dark, the Imperium Nihilus. And those storylines still happen in the normal Imperium, but Guilliman's there to save the day all the time. In the Imperium, right? And then the Southern Imperium, not the Imperium Nihilus, right? You know, the Imperium Nihilus is a bittersweet place, right? All of the old heroes like Dante are fighting to the last there. It's a wonderful time to be a Games Workshop fan, and this is the thing that Games Workshop do very well. And my closing point on why Games Workshop will never really bend the knee to moral panic is because they take that moral panic and they make a setting about it, which is what they've literally done, right? They've literally created conflict within their own setting of people like Gabriel Seth, not trusting the new Primaris Marines and beating the shit out of them because he thinks they're just, let's be honest, it thinks they're soft, right? He thinks these new people are soft, things like that. They are so clever, Games Workshop, at taking real-life hobby concerns and throwing them into the actual lore. Look at the Red Scorpions. I've said this before. Look at the Red Scorpions. They are a Forge World only chapter. You can only buy them from Forge World, right? So they know that these Marines are going to cater to the elite snobs in the hobby who want to pay a lot of money for their special Space Marines, right? So what are the Red Scorpions like? They're arrogant. They're obsessed with purity. They don't like anything that is a slight deviation from what they term as humanist perfection, right? They're basically Forge World buyers. That's basically what they are, right? You have the Imperium Nihilist, which is for all the old guard, like myself, to go in and be like, this is great. We're getting all of our grim, dark storylines. We're getting all of our fighting uphill against adversity stuff. This is great. We're making a last stand against evil, right? And then you got the normal Imperium, where people go, I like it when the good guys win. Look at the fate of Konor. That debacle, right? The good guys were never going to lose that, and they've never lost anything. Let's be honest with you, and they never will in the normal Imperium. Imperium Nihilist, though, that's the grim shit, right? You don't know which way it's going to swing. Obviously, again, there are exceptions to every rule, right? There are exceptions. So you have people like Magnus getting certain wins in the normal Imperium, and you have people like Gilliman crossing over into Imperium Nihilist to save the day once or twice. But on the main majority, the Warhammer 40,000 setting warps and changes with the moral panic. It doesn't change everything. It's like the Egyptians, right? Boom, segue, right? It's like the ancient Egyptians and Egyptians throughout history, actually, even to the medieval age. They didn't resist change, right? They incorporated it into what was already there and made it their own, right? You look at the Romans going over you look at the Greeks going over, they just absorbed the Greeks. Look at the Romans going over, they just absorbed the Romans. Look at the rise of Islam over there, they just absorbed Islam into what was already there. It was this huge melting pot of conflicting ideas that was so interesting to watch, and that's what Warhammer 40,000 is. Alright, so today I wanted to take some Warhammer 40,000 stories from my stores and jimmy them in to a point I wanted to make about the moral panic, because I was asked to. There we go. There's your video for today. Next time we'll be looking at Games Workshop's pay schedule and pay. We're looking at an actual pay slip that I have. I'm going to blank out my second name and my national insurance number and things like that, obviously, because I don't want you guys, I don't want Games Workshop getting a hold of that, or anyone who likes Games Workshop too much getting a hold of that, thinking I'm dragging them down and then either suing me or ruining my life. So, thank you very, very, very much for watching, and I'll speak to you next time.